It is crunch time for the U.S. Supreme Court, which goes on recess at the end of the month, and there are 23 undecided cases here. Could any of those decisions be announced today or in the coming weeks? Joining us to run us through some of the possibilities and what is still outstanding here is Professor Stephen Caliendo with North Central College. Professor, thanks for being here.
Great to be with you, yeah.
I want to start off by asking you about this birthright citizenship situation. This is a case called Trump versus Barbera. Run us through kind of the nuts and bolts here and what, I mean, birthright, this would involve a constitutional change,
Absolutely right.
Right?
I mean, so this is a question, and almost always the court is talking about constitutional questions, right? But this one is really interesting because it has to do with an interpretation of what appears to be very clear language in the Constitution, that if you are born in the United States under its jurisdiction, unless you are born of someone who is a diplomat, that is not subject to the laws of the United States, you're a citizen. And that is not common. In other words, other European countries don't have that. Birthright citizenship is sort of unique. But it's been a fixture of the United States for well over 100 years, right after the Civil War. The Trump administration is arguing that that amendment, that part of the 14th Amendment, was designed only to apply to the children of formerly enslaved persons.
So that it doesn't.
It's a very narrow interpretation. So that's what we're waiting for the Supreme Court to hear. I think it would be very surprising if they overturn it. It would be surprising to me if it's anything but 9-0.
Got it. Okay, unanimous.
That's
okay,
right.
The next case, this is called Little versus Hecox, and there's actually two involved here.
Yes.
West Virginia versus BJP. This has to do with transgender athletes,
That's
correct?
Right. Yeah, the reason there's two cases, there's one at the collegiate level, and then there's one at the high school level.
High school.
So that's the reason why they're looking at both cases. And so, right, the question is, where do trans persons' rights stop and cisgender persons' rights begin? Should trans women and girls in particular be allowed to play in sports that are typically reserved for cisgender women?
Okay, so any outlook? Do you expect this to go on kind of where the justices fall ideologically?
This one, sort of, there's a guns case. There's some of these real typical cases. I think we can fairly predict that, you know, we have the 6-3 conservative majority. Yeah. They're probably going to fall that way. It may not be 6-3, it may be 5-4. It'll probably fall that way. But some of these others that deal with the president's power, there's more questions involved with those.
Okay, it's a big primary year here, election year. This case, Watson versus RNC, is still outstanding right now. And this has to do with mail-in ballots that arrive after Election Day, correct?
Well, not necessarily arrive after Election Day, that are counted after Election Day. And that's the question. But a number of states prohibit ballots counting if they arrive after election, or if they're not postmarked after Election Day. They got to be postmarked by Election Day. And the Republican National Committee is arguing, no, you know, you vote on Election Day, and that's the only time you vote. You might be able to have overseas for folks who are serving in the military, et cetera, but we shouldn't be doing widespread mail-in balloting.
Okay, another case involving the president as well, Trump versus Slaughter. This has to do with whether the president has the power to fire the heads of agencies that are independent or supposed to be independent.
Typically, yeah, we have understood at least since the 1930s to be operating independently. They are part of the executive branch. There's no question about that. They're not part of the legislative or judicial. So if you're in the federal government, you got to be in one of those three branches. But they're not under the jurisdiction of a president the way employees of a company might be under the jurisdiction of a CEO, for instance, or a president. And so there's this question of whether he has the right to do that. And then there's a separate question involving a Fed board member that the court's taking up separately to say whether or not that institution has more independence even than these other institutions that we've believed to be independent for the last 100 years.
Okay, so I know there are, let's see, probably a couple dozen.
Yeah, we didn't get to a dozen.
We don't have time, but in the coming weeks, how does this usually roll out? Because they're expected to go on recess.
That's
How do you, on, let's see, Thursdays of each?
Thursdays,
I mean, is this when they've been releasing?
10 o'clock Eastern time on Thursdays. The court will open session. There's a couple boxes that are sitting there, and it depends how many boxes there are, but that's how you know how many cases there are going to be. And they're read by the order, that reverse seniority order of the justice who wrote the opinion. And so you can get some sense about who starts, knowing how many are going to be left, right? If Ketanji Brown Jackson reads the first one, you go, oh, wow, there's 8 justices left. We could have a number of opinions today. Last couple weeks, we've only had 2 or 3 each Thursday. Those numbers aren't going to add up if they really want to get done by the 4th of July, which I think they do.
They're busy.
Yeah, they're busy.
They're busy. Professor Caliendo, good to see you. Thanks for breaking that all down for us. And we will obviously be keeping you guys posted as soon as we hear anything, if we hear anything from the Supreme Court today.